Right. But you did make a comment that David only made eye contact with Robin. Did you feel that maybe
Robin's very easy to talk to. I think
he was nervous?
Hello, besties. It's Meenal from Without a Reality Check. And today, I have something on my mind that I just can't get out of my head. As I was glued to my screen watching the latest tell-all, something about Kody Brown's actions just didn't feel right. He continued to deflect answers, close down conversations, and sidestep any genuine discussion of what went wrong. Now, I know. People have moved on. But the way that Kody attempted to silence others seemed deliberate, like he didn't want to hear anyone else's truth. And that's where things got juicy. He even went so far as to accuse Suki of gaslighting him, and not only her, but really anyone who questioned his story. But this is the kicker. Kody doesn't even appear to know what gaslighting is. Let's have a quick reality check. Gaslighting is not merely that someone is not agreeing with your point of view. It's a manipulative strategy, commonly employed in controlling or emotionally abusive relationships whereby one intentionally causes the other person to doubt their own memory, reality, and even their own sanity. It's about causing confusion, deflecting blame, and finally, manipulating the narrative. Ring a bell. Now here's where things get deeper. For Kody to say he's being gaslit, he'd have to be the victim. But let's not forget, in those relationships, he was in the power seat. In fact, while watching the tell-all, he did in fact show classic gaslighting behavior himself. He minimized others' experiences, denied his own words, and even shifted the conversation to fit his narrative. And then, there was that weird instant when he said he used to contemplate spending a guy's weekend with David. Seriously? That came out of the blue. David replied politely, but guarded something along the lines of, "Yeah, perhaps, but there would be restrictions." And we all got the implication. And then immediately thereafter, Kody took it back. Suddenly, it was, "No, I wouldn't do that." So, what is it, Kody? That's a textbook contradiction, a gaslighting red flag. But here's where the energy really shifted, and you'll want to hear this part. Near the end of the episode, Kody explained first meeting David, and what he told us raised more than a few eyebrows. He insinuated that David had been flirting with Christine. Yes, seriously. Kody attempted to cast himself as the good guy, the faithful dad, the doting grandfather. But beneath the surface, it was all about territory. He wasn't merely explaining a first meeting. He was claiming ground. And here's Robin. She got in on the action, too. She wouldn't even look at any videos. She wouldn't even acknowledge that Kody was jealous, instead blaming his ever-red face as the cause of why he was upset. Was he jealous? Perhaps. Was he insecure too? Certainly. Let's take a break. Because here's where it really gets revealing. As Christine documented on Instagram, this scene was filmed in October of 2024, roughly around the same time that she sought out custody, paternity, and child support. Meanwhile, Kody was being aloof and avoiding emotional responsibility. Meanwhile, significant legal action was already in motion behind the scenes. That changes everything, and frankly, I don't think Kody desires Christine's return. But I do think his pride is hurt. The need to manipulate the story, the emotional paradoxes, the public denial, it all speaks to one thing: a person who lost control and has no idea how to deal with it. There's still so much to unpack here, and if you're feeling what I'm saying, you're going to want to stay tuned. Because this story, it's far from over. There's a certain nervousness you can't counterfeit, and Christine possessed that sort of energy when she was near Kody. Not the kind that's awkward, the kind that transcends something deeper. something unspoken. And it hit me hard. How she talked, how she stiffened. It was the fear of proximity to someone who'd had power over her in the past. Christine used to give it her all. She was in emotionally, physically, spiritually. Everything she did was for the family. And now, with time and distance, the picture is much clearer. That fear that she feels, it doesn't develop out of nowhere. It makes me wonder what truly occurred behind closed doors that we still don't know about. And the more I watch, the clearer it is. Christine isn't frustrated. She's repressing years of hurt, of betrayal, of emotional repression. She's the one most bent on calling out Kody. And that tells us something, doesn't it? That level of clarity only comes after time, and likely healing. It's obvious that her marriage to David, her new husband, has assisted her in self-improvement and getting back on her feet. Whether it's through some sort of personal development or through therapy, and I imagine therapy has been involved, Christine is seeing Kody for the man he actually was. She's labeling the manipulation, the games, the emotional abuse. She's saying it out loud, and it makes a difference. Because when survivors testify, even softly, even cautiously, it's an act of claiming back truth. Christine referenced the ways in which Kody used the women, the ways in which he stringed them along, the ways in which he manipulated the emotional atmosphere of those relationships. And that makes sense with what all of us witnessed. There were games of the mind, there was manipulation, and now she's piecing it together. But here's where the trauma appears. And this is an actual thing. Christine has talked about dealing with PTSD because of being at Flagstaff. And you could sense the tension when the subject of her being in the same space as Kody was brought up. Individuals who have survived abuse tend to bring that tension along with them to future interactions, particularly when the abuser isn't changed. And let's be real, Kody hasn't. He still manipulates, he still controls. He either shuts people down or rewrites history. Accountability? That is not something he cares about unless it shuts up the conversation. And Christine knows that. She knows how easily he twists words. She knows how he spins narratives to suit himself. That's why she's cautious. That's why she's guarded. And it's a smart move because people like Kody don't change unless they want to. And he clearly doesn't. It's sad, but also beautiful to see Christine set that line in the sand. She initiated custody, paternity, and child support proceedings just weeks before this reunion was taped. That wasn't merely legal action, it was safeguarding. For her daughter, because whatever was going on behind closed doors couldn't be worked out quietly anymore. It had to go to the courts. And here's the kicker that really shows Kody's way of thinking. At the tell-all, Christine even joked, politely, tentatively, about a future double date. She was attempting to be open, lighthearted, even optimistic. But Kody? He shut it down. He couldn't even pretend to consider it. First, he said he had a healthier relationship with David. Then he said perhaps they could all sit down and discuss it. Then, mere minutes later, he dismissed it altogether. And when Suki asked him why, he simply replied, "Personal reasons." Christine is very undermining. And it was over. He fell silent, refused to explain. There was an impossibly awkward silence wherein he glared at her, remained silent, and actually flicked a small piece of lint onto the ground. It was tense. You could almost sense the steam pressure in his silence. But let's discuss that word, undermining, because that was his major charge. And it doesn't really fit, does it? Undermining is when someone slowly dissolves another's authority or credibility usually in sneaky, manipulative manner. That's what narcissists do to control. They belittle others. They downplay them. They distort narratives until nothing is real anymore. And here, it's obvious. Christine isn't undermining Kody. She's not letting him remold the past. And perhaps that's what irks him most. When you think of the word undermining, imagine a gradual and insidious stripping away of another person's authority or power, removing their confidence or ability. Here, Kody is attempting to suggest that Christine in some way has power over him, that her experience has the right to undermine his authority. If he really did think he was being undermined, though, it's obvious that he wouldn't want someone undermining his authority. What he simply can't handle is hearing how his behavior has affected her. He's hell-bent on sidestepping and retreating back into his bubble of superiority rather than dealing with reality. Think about this. Kody's avoidance of discussing the topic isn't merely about defending his reputation. It suggests deeper annoyances. In my view, his ire is compounded by the knowledge that Christine is pursing child support, a quest that runs directly counter to a vow he insisted at one time she would never be required to make. The notion that she has the legal right to assert her rights annoys him, as though he's being compelled to obey laws he would just as soon disregard. In refusing to let her fight for what's best for her child, he's not only avoiding responsibility, but also communicating a message about whose interests are really important. And when a parent won't stand up for their child's legal rights, it all points to the kind of lesson it teaches the child. There's more at stake here than lawyerly nitpicking. There's raw emotion involved. Christine's gutsy decision to seek custody, paternity, and child support, only a matter of weeks before this was documented, wasn't taken lightly. It was a direct action to shield herself and her daughter, a public pronouncement that she would no longer stand for him evading responsibility. And the timing is no accident. It emphasizes the actual consequences at stake and increases the tension that pervades each encounter between them. Now here's where things get really complicated. Kody has consistently pushed aside talking about Christine, saying he doesn't want to discuss her at all. When the notion of having a future double date came up, something even as tentative and hopeful as that, he shut it down entirely. Rather than welcoming even a suggestion of reconciliation, he attacked with claims of feeling undermined. His inability to face the issue indicates he's still trapped in his own web of games, taking any opportunity to uphold his superiority. What do people actually mean when they claim to feel undermined? In a true sense, it's about slowly wearing down someone's confidence or ability. But with Kody, it appears to be a red herring. He's so angry that Christine did what she had to do to protect her daughter's future, things that legally obligate him to provide for her, that he instead attacks her character rather than the things he himself set in motion. He's bitter over the past, even going all the way so far as to claim that his deteriorating relationship with Christine is the central issue. But if you pay close attention, his arguments fall apart. They're simply evasions intended to alter your perception of his own failures. There is one very indicative moment when he mentions how, even in the time of COVID, he asserted that being in those relationships would cut short his life. It was an excuse for pulling back and a way to imply that stepping away from obligations somehow worked in his favor. But in reality, it sounds like nothing more than a clever ruse, a means of avoiding responsibility for ducking out of his duties the minute he was distracted by something that interested him. Anyone who leaves being a parent behind in order to pursue temporary personal satisfaction ultimately sends a negative message to his child. Lastly, look at the extreme difference between Kody and the others. And while Christine is compelled to call him out for the abuse, Janelle is far more reserved, unwilling even to share the same room with him. Yet Christine always goes for the kill, exposing the abuse, abandonment, manipulation, and neglect. Her words have power because she is giving nothing. She is fighting for her daughter, for justice. In the meantime, Kody remains in denial, believing that the negative reviews on the internet are merely a ploy against his leadership. But when cornered to respond constructively, he reverts to his old tricks of mind games and ignoring, a definite sign that he is still not willing to accept accountability for his actions. So here's the truth. Kody claims he wasn't interested in those relationships anymore. Well, Kody, if that's how you truly feel, then take credit for it. Say it and mean it. But here's what Janelle and Christine are saying loud and clear. Kody and Robin will never own up. And it's not that Christine is belittling him, it's that she mirrors back reality. And narcissists don't like to be around those who hold up a mirror. Christine is the one who tells it like it is. She is now the scapegoat because she won't go along with the fantasy anymore. She won't be silenced, and that is what makes her powerful. That is what scares Kody. Not Christine's behavior, but Christine's truth. Now I know there are always folks out there that say she should just move on. But recovery from a toxic relationship does not work this way. A part of taking back your power is speaking your truth. And each and every one of these women need to be allowed to tell their story in their own words for as long as it takes. What they experienced wasn't a breakup. It was trauma. It was emotional warfare. And they are finally taking back their voices. So, what do you think? Is this why Kody was so obviously angry? Because the truth was finally louder than his control? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear what you have to say. If this video touched a nerve with you, please like it. It really makes a difference. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that little bell icon so you never miss a new video. Thanks so much for coming. I appreciate each of you. Until next time, bye guys.